Welcome back to ZE Coins. Today, we are diving deep into the world of Jefferson Nichols, and we are going to uncover the top 8 most valuable 5-cent coins that have shocked collectors and even reached values in the millions of dollars in the current market. We are going to talk about one of the most common, yet surprisingly interesting coins in American pocket change, the 1978 Jefferson 5-cent nickel. Many people still overlook this coin when they come across it in their spare change, but the truth is that the Jefferson nickel from 1978 has both a fascinating history and a collector market that makes it worth talking about, even if you have never really paid attention to nickels before. The Jefferson nickel itself was first introduced in 1938 when it replaced the Buffalo nickel, and the design was created by Felix Schlag. It features a portrait of Thomas Jefferson on the front or obverse side, with the word Liberty in script and the date off to the right side of Jefferson's profile. On the back or reverse side, you can see Jefferson's home, Monticello in Virginia, with the denomination 5 cents and the words United States of America around the edge. This design remained mostly unchanged for decades until more modern updates came along. But in 1978, the coin was still being struck in that original classic style. Now, let's talk specifically about 1978. This was a year when the United States Mint was producing nickels at both the Philadelphia and Denver mints. No nickels were struck in San Francisco for circulation that year, though proof coins were made for collectors. The Philadelphia Mint coins will not have a mint mark, and the Denver Mint coins will carry the small D mint mark on the reverse next to Monticello. One of the key details for collectors when talking about 1,978 nickels is that none of them were made out of silver. Instead, they were made of the standard composition of 75% copper and 25% nickel. This means that their base metal value is very close to 5 cents, but the collector value can be much more. The total mintage in 1978 was very high, over 300 million from Philadelphia and well over 300 million from Denver, so the coin is by no means rare in average circulated condition. Most examples are only worth face value, but the real interest comes when you look at coins that are in uncirculated condition or that have special errors or varieties. If you happen to find a 1978 Jefferson nickel in mint state condition, meaning it has never been used in circulation and has nowhere, collectors often pay more than face value for it. Common uncirculated pieces can bring anywhere from 25 cents to a few dollars, depending on the grade. The grading scale goes from 1 up to 70, with 70 being a perfect flawless coin. So a 1978 nickel that grades MS65 or higher is much more desirable. Some of these coins can sell for $10 to $20 or even more if the luster and strike quality are especially strong. Another thing that makes some 1978 nickels worth money are mint errors. These include things like off-center strikes, double dies, clip planchets, or full steps varieties. When collectors say full steps, they are referring to the steps at the base of Monticello on the reverse design. If the steps are fully struck with no breaks, it is considered a higher quality strike, and those examples bring much stronger prices. In fact, some 1978 nickels with full steps grading at MS67 or higher have sold at auction for well over $1,000, and in some cases close to $2,000. Now, let's touch on the proof coins struck at the San Francisco Mint in 1978. These were not intended for circulation, but rather sold to collectors in proof sets. Proof coins have a special mirrored surface and sharp details. A typical 1978 proof nickel is worth only a couple of dollars, but examples that grade very high, such as PR70 or coins with cameo or deep cameo contrast, can bring higher premiums, sometimes in the $20 to $50 range or more if certified by a top grading service. So what does all this mean for the current market value today? In 2025, most circulated 1978 Jefferson nickels are worth only their face value of 5 cents, but uncirculated examples can be worth from a quarter to a couple dollars. Better quality full steps examples can sell for anywhere from $25 to several hundred, and the top-graded full steps examples have sold for thousands of dollars. So it really depends on condition, grade, and whether or not your coin has special features. To wrap this up, the 1978 Jefferson 5-cent nickel is a coin with a huge mintage, and many of them still exist in circulation today, so most are not rare. However, high-grade mint state examples, especially with full steps or error varieties, can be very collectible and bring surprising prices. We are diving into the world of Jefferson nickels, and specifically the 1982 P5-cent nickel, a coin that at first glance might look ordinary in your change, but can actually carry a fascinating history and in some cases surprising value. When we think of the Jefferson nickel, we go all the way back to 1938, when it was first introduced, replacing the Buffalo nickel. The design by Felix Schlag features the left-facing portrait of President Thomas Jefferson on the obverse with the word Liberty in his own handwriting style, and on the reverse the design shows Monticello, his Virginia home. This design has been a mainstay of American coinage for decades, making the Jefferson nickel one of the longest-running designs in United States history. Now, when we focus on the year 1982, it was a unique period in American coinage. The Philadelphia Mint struck over 500 million nickels that year, all carrying the simple P Mint mark on the reverse for Philadelphia, and for many collectors, the early 1980s. Jefferson nickels may seem common, but certain varieties and high-grade examples can fetch strong prices in the market. One important detail to know is that during this time the U.S. Mint was still transitioning with mint mark styles and strike quality, and this gives us collectors opportunities to look for gems hidden in plain sight. Let us first talk about the metal composition. The 1982 nickel is made of 75% copper and 25% nickel, a durable alloy that has been consistent throughout most of the Jefferson nickel series. Unlike cents, which went through a metal change in 1982 from copper to zinc, the nickel remains steady, but that does not mean they are all the same in value. So, what makes the 1982p nickel special? It comes down to condition, rarity, and high grades and demand. In circulated condition, the coin is typically worth just face value 5 cents because so many were minted and survived, but when you find one in mint state condition, especially graded by services like PCGS or NGC with a strong strike and clean surfaces, that is where the value begins to climb. For example, in mint state 65, the coin might bring around $3 to $5 in today's market, but when you push into mint state 66 or 67, the value multiplies dramatically. Auction records have shown some spectacular results. A 1982p Jefferson nickel graded MS 67 full steps, a designation, meaning that the steps of Monticello on the reverse are sharply struck and fully visible, sold for several $100s in past sales, and in some cases even over $1,000. The full steps designation is the holy grail for Jefferson nickel collectors because strike quality is often weak, and having all the steps sharp and clear is rare. That is why if you ever find a 1982 nickel in great shape with crisp details, hold on to it, because it could be worth far more than pocket change. Now, let us talk about errors, because error coins are always exciting. The 1982p nickel has been reported with die cracks, off-center strikes, and even some broad strikes. These mint errors can bring premium value depending on the severity and eye appeal. A dramatic off-center strike, for example, could sell for $50 to $100 or more, while a small die crack might bring a modest premium to collectors who love variety coins. In terms of current market value, as of today, circulated examples remain at face value. Mint state examples without full steps generally bring a few dollars in MS65, but true gems MS67 with full steps are highly sought after and can easily surpass $200 or more depending on the auction. And the buyer market demand for Jefferson nickels has grown in recent years, especially for top population coins, those few examples that sit at the highest grade level known to exist. The competition among registry set collectors pushes the price higher and higher. So if you are checking your change or going through rolls from the bank, keep your eyes open for 1982p nickels with sharp strikes, clean fields, and most importantly, those full steps on Monticello, because that is where the real money lies. Even though over $500 million were made, only a small fraction will grade high enough to command serious premiums. To sum it up, the 1982p Jefferson nickel may be common in circulation, but in gem uncirculated condition, especially with full steps, it transforms from a simple 5-cent piece into a collectible worth hundreds of dollars. Its place in the history of American coinage makes it a fun and affordable entry point for new collectors and a challenging pursuit for specialists looking for the finest known examples. We are going to take a deep dive into the fascinating world of United States coin collecting, and specifically we are focusing on the 1984D Jefferson 5-cent nickel coin. This is one of those coins that might look like just another nickel in your pocket change, but in reality, it has some really interesting history, some important details that can make it worth more than just 5 cents, and it is definitely a coin that every collector should know a little bit about. Let's start with the background. The Jefferson nickel series began all the way back in 1938 when it replaced the Buffalo nickel design and since then it has been one of the longest-running series in American coinage history. The obverse features a portrait of President Thomas Jefferson designed by Felix Schlag, and the reverse shows Monticello, which is Jefferson's home in Virginia. The design went largely unchanged for decades, which means collectors often look for small minting differences, dates, mint marks, and errors that can separate common pieces from valuable ones. Now, let us focus on the 1984 D nickel. The letter D indicates that this coin was struck at the Denver Mint, and in that year production was very high, with well over 1 billion nickels being minted. That means the vast majority of 1984 D nickels are still only worth their face value of 5 cents when found in circulation. However, condition and rarity always play a big role in coin collecting, and there are certain examples of this coin that can fetch much more. When we talk about value, the most important factor is condition. Coins are graded on the Sheldon scale, which ranges from 1 for the poorest condition all the way to 70 for a perfect mint state coin. Most 1984 D nickels that you find in pocket change will grade somewhere in the circulated range from good to very fine, and those will almost always be worth just 5 cents. But when you find a coin that has never been circulated or one that has been carefully preserved and graded by a professional grading service, it can be worth dollars instead of cents. Mint state examples of the 1984 D Jefferson nickel typically sell for $1 to $3 in grades around MS63 to MS64. When you move into higher grades like MS65 or MS66, the price can go up to $10, $20, or even more, depending on eye appeal, luster, and strike quality. And there are extremely high-end examples certified at MS67, which are very scarce. Those coins have sold for hundreds of dollars at major auctions, simply because of their rarity and top condition. Another important detail is the existence of errors and varieties. Collectors love error coins, and the 1984 D nickel is no exception. Some examples may show die cracks, off-center strikes, double dies, or clip planchets, while most minor errors might bring only a few dollars. More dramatic and well-defined errors can bring significantly higher premiums, and this is where an ordinary nickel can suddenly become a showpiece in a collection. There is also interest in full steps designations on Jefferson nickels. This refers to the steps on Monticello on the reverse of the coin. When a coin is struck sharply enough that all the steps are visible without breaks, it earns the full steps designation. These are especially valuable because they are much harder to find, and collectors prize them highly. For 1984 D nickels with full steps in mint state condition, prices can reach into the hundreds of dollars for superb examples. Now let us look at the current market value. In general circulation, fines are still worth 5 cents, but uncirculated coins start around $1 to $3. Certified high-grade coins can range anywhere from $10 to $100, and those rare full-step examples can go into the several hundreds depending on grade and demand. The coin market fluctuates with collector interest, but Jefferson nickels continue to be a strong segment of the hobby, and the 1984 D remains a coin worth checking carefully whenever it passes through your hands. To wrap things up, the 1984 D Jefferson nickel may not be the rarest coin, but it carries with it the history of one of America's longest-running coin designs. It shows how condition, rarity, and small details can transform a common 5-cent piece into something worth real money. And it is always worth taking a closer look, because you never know when that nickel in your change might turn out to be a valuable collectible. We are going to talk about the 1989 Jefferson nickel with the Philadelphia Mint mark, the letter P, and why this common-looking coin could be worth much more than just 5 cents. Many people overlook modern nickels, but collectors know that certain dates, mint marks, and conditions can turn a pocket change coin into a valuable collectible. First, let us look at the history of the Jefferson nickel design. The Jefferson nickel was introduced in 1938, replacing the Buffalo nickel, and it features a portrait of Thomas Jefferson on the front, also known as the obverse, with his home Monticello on the reverse, designed by Felix Schlag. This coin has been a mainstay of U.S. coinage for decades now. By 1989, the United States Mint was producing hundreds of millions of nickels per year, but even within such a large mintage, there are rare varieties and high-grade examples that can command strong prices in the collector's market. The 1989 nickel struck at the Philadelphia Mint carries the letter P as its mint mark. Located on the right side of the coin, just below the date, in that year, the Philadelphia Mint produced well over 500 million nickels, making it a very common coin to find in circulation. However, what separates the regular 5-cent coin from a valuable collector piece is the condition, the strike quality, and any possible errors. So let us talk about value. The face value, of course, is only 5 cents, and most worn examples from circulation are worth only that. But if you find a coin in uncirculated condition, meaning it shows no wear from use, it can bring a premium. For example, in grades such as Mint State 63 or Mint State 65, the coin could sell for a couple of dollars, which may not seem like much, but remember that is many times more than its face value. The real money comes into play when we talk about the highest grades. Collectors and grading services such as PCGS or NGC assign grades up to Mint State 70, a perfect coin, and the 1989 P. Jefferson nickel in those very top grades is scarce. Because finding a perfectly preserved nickel without scratches, contact marks, or dull luster is very difficult. Examples that grade MS67 or higher can be worth serious money, sometimes ranging from $100 to several $100s, depending on eye appeal and demand. In addition, there are error coins which can make a 1989 P nickel worth a lot more. Collectors seek out off-center strikes, double dies clipped planchets, or full steps designations. Now, full steps refers to the steps on the Monticello. Building on the reverse, if all 5 or 6 steps are fully struck and visible, the coin commands a strong premium. Because most nickels from that era did not strike fully clear in the Monticello steps, a 1989 P nickel with full steps in high grade can sell for over $100, and in some rare auction cases, even more. Let us talk about the current market today. In 2025, collectors continue to show interest in Jefferson nickels, especially when it comes to high-grade registry sets. Prices for a typical circulated 1989 P nickel remain only 5 cents, but if you have one in Mint State 66 or better, especially with full steps, it could bring between $50 and $200, depending on the buyer. In auctions, some of the finest known examples have sold for over $400, making a coin that started life as a simple 5-cent piece into a serious collectible investment. So what does this mean for you? It means that searching through your change or even checking coin rolls from the bank can be a fun and potentially profitable hobby. Keep an eye out for sharp strikes, check those Monticello steps, and consider having any uncirculated or especially clean coins graded by a professional service, because the right coin in the right grade can bring much more than you might expect. So, in summary, the 1989 P. Jefferson nickel is generally common, but in the best conditions with full steps or interesting errors, it can be worth far more than face value. Collectors pay strong premiums for quality examples, and the current market continues to reward those who take the time to search carefully. That wraps up our deep dive on the 1989 P. Jefferson nickel. Remember, every coin has a story, and sometimes even. We are diving deep into the fascinating history and current market value of the 1991 P. Jefferson nickel. This 5-cent coin is one of those modern-era pieces that collectors often overlook, but in reality, it carries much more significance and potential value than most people realize. So let's explore why the Jefferson nickel series began all the way back in 1938, replacing the Buffalo nickel in it. Was designed by Felix Schlag, whose portrait of Thomas Jefferson remained on the coin for decades with only minor modifications over the years. The 1991 P nickel in particular was struck at the Philadelphia Mint and bears the P Mint mark on the obverse just to the right of Monticello. When you flip the coin over, you see Jefferson's famous home, which has always been the centerpiece of this design. Now, let's talk about the numbers. In 1991, the Philadelphia Mint produced over 600 million of these nickels. That is a massive mintage, so in circulated grades, these coins are extremely common and often only worth face value. However, the story changes when we begin looking at high-grade, uncirculated examples, coins that have been carefully preserved without scratches, without bag marks, and without wear, are where the value starts to grow. Collectors and grading services like PCGS and NGC will certify these nickels, and in Mint State 65, they are worth around $2 to $5, which may not sound like much, but remember that is already more than face value. Move into Mint State 66, and you are looking at prices in the range of $10 to $20 now. When you reach Mint State 67, that is where the rarity kicks in, because very few examples survive in such pristine condition. Here, values can jump to $50, $100, and in some cases even more. But what about the truly elite coins, those few that have been graded Mint State 67 plus or Mint State 68? These are almost impossible to find, but when they do appear at major auctions, collectors are willing to pay hundreds of dollars in. Fact past sales records show that a superb gem example of a 1991p nickel has sold for over $1,000, depending on the strike, the luster, and the eye appeal. So even a coin you might think is common can turn out to be a small fortune if it is preserved in the highest quality. Another factor to keep in mind is errors and varieties. While most 1991p nickels look standard, there are always chances of finding off-center strikes, die cracks, double dies, or other minting mistakes. These types of errors can dramatically increase value because they are one-of-a-kind examples. Collectors love uniqueness and will often pay big premiums for such pieces. Let's put this all together. When you come across a 1991p Jefferson nickel in circulation, it is likely worth only 5 cents. But if you have one in uncirculated condition, especially if it is a high-grade slabbed by PCGS or NGC, the value could be anywhere from a few dollars to several hundred, and in the rarest cases, possibly over $1,000. The lesson here is never overlook your change and always check for quality and details. In today's market, collectors are increasingly focused on modern-era coins because older series like the Buffalo Nickel and Liberty Head Nickel have already skyrocketed in price. That means coins like the Jefferson Nickel from the 1980s and 1990s are beginning to attract more attention, and as demand grows, so does value. So the 1991p is an excellent candidate for long-term investment if you can secure top great examples. We are going to take a deep dive into the Jefferson 5-cent nickel minted in the year 1994 with the Denver Mint mark, also known as the 1994D Jefferson nickel. This coin may look very common at first glance because billions of nickels circulate every year in the United States, but sometimes a coin that appears ordinary can carry history, interesting details, and even hidden value that collectors are looking for. So let us talk about its background history, how it was made, what makes it special, how much it is worth, and what the current market says about it. The Jefferson Nickel series began in 1938, replacing the Buffalo Nickel. The new design was created by artist Felix Schlag, who presented a left-facing portrait of Thomas Jefferson on the obverse side. Jefferson was, of course, the third president of the United States, the main author of the Declaration of Independence, and one of the most influential figures in American history. On the reverse side, the coin features Jefferson's Virginia home, Monticello, a neoclassical mansion that has become one of the most recognized landmarks on United States coinage. Now, moving forward to 1994, this was a time when the U.S. Mint was still producing Jefferson nickels in large numbers from both the Philadelphia and Denver mints. The 1994D nickel was struck at the Denver Mint, which is marked by the small letter D located to the right of Jefferson's portrait just below the year. The mintage was high with over 700 million pieces produced. So at first glance, most collectors would assume that every coin from this year is common. However, condition, rarity, and striking quality can make a big difference in the coin market. The average 1994D nickel in circulated condition that you might find in pocket change is generally worth only face value, just 5 cents. Collectors do not pay extra for coins that are worn in common, but when you move into higher grades, especially mint state examples, the value starts to climb. Uncirculated coins that are still bright, lustrous, and show no wear at all are much harder to come by, especially in the very top grades. Professional grading services like PCGS or NGC have certified some of these coins in grades MS65, MS66, and even MS67. And when you get into those gem levels, collectors are willing to pay strong premiums. To give you an idea of the value, let us look at recent market trends as of now. Coins in typical circulated grades are worth just 5 cents to perhaps 10 cents if they are lightly circulated. Coins in uncirculated mint state condition can sell for $1 to $5 depending on the grade. If you find a coin in superb gem quality MS66 or higher, it could be worth $20, $50, or even more in some cases. Auction results have shown that certified MS67 examples of the 1994D Jefferson nickel have sold for several $100s, making them highly desirable among registry set collectors. Errors and varieties also play a role in coin collecting, and the 1994D nickel does have some known die varieties. Collectors look for things like double dies, repunched mint marks, or off-center strikes. While most examples are normal, if you happen to find an error such as a major die clash or an off-center strike, the value could jump dramatically, sometimes into the hundreds of dollars, depending on severity and demand among collectors. It is also worth mentioning that the Jefferson nickel design underwent changes later in 2004 and 2005 when the Westward Journey nickels were introduced. followed by a new forward-facing Jefferson portrait in 2006 that means coins from the 1990s like the 1994D are part of the classic design type, and they form an important part of modern U.S. coin history collectors who are working on complete sets of Jefferson nickels always need this year and mint mark. So what does this mean for you? If you find a 1994D nickel in your change, check it closely. Most likely it will be just face value, but if it looks sharp, uncirculated, or if you think it might be a high-grade specimen, consider putting it aside better, yet you can submit it for professional grading if you believe it is truly a gem, because the difference between a 5-cent coin and a $100 coin often comes down to small details like strike luster and surface quality. In summary, the 1994D Jefferson nickel is a common coin in circulation, but it carries history going back to Thomas Jefferson and Monticello. It was minted in huge numbers, yet condition, rarity, and error varieties can make certain pieces worth far more than face value. Today, circulated coins are worth 5 cents, uncirculated coins might bring $1 to $5, and certified high-grade coins can fetch anywhere from $20 to several $100s at auction. If you are a coin collector, or even just someone checking change, it is always worth keeping an eye on coins like this, because you never know when you might come across a gem that is worth a lot more than expected. We are going to take a deep dive into one of the most fascinating modern-era coins in American numismatics, the 2001D Jefferson 5-cent nickel. This coin might seem ordinary at first glance, but it has a very interesting history, and in certain cases can be worth far more than just 5 cents. Collectors all around the world are always hunting for examples of this coin in top condition, and today I am going to explain why. Let us begin with the background. The Jefferson nickel has been in circulation since 1938, replacing the Buffalo nickel, and it features the portrait of Thomas Jefferson, the third president of the United States, on the obverse, and his famous home Monticello on the reverse, designed by Felix Schlag. The Jefferson nickel has had a long run, and the 2001D issue is part of the later years before the redesigns of the Westward Journey series in 2004 and 2005. Now the 2001D nickel was minted at the Denver Mint. The D mint mark is placed to the right of Monticello on the reverse. The Denver Mint produced over 563 million examples of this coin in 2001, so it is by no means rare in terms of overall mintage. Most of these coins entered circulation, and many are still being used in everyday commerce. However, what makes the coin interesting is the condition, rarity, and the fact that high-grade examples are difficult to find, even though so many were made in circulated condition. The 2001D nickel is worth face value only 5 cents, but when you start looking at mint state coins with no where on them, the value starts to climb. Collectors pay close attention to coins graded by services like PCGS and NGC, and the higher the grade, the higher the value. A mint state 65 coin, for example, might only be worth a couple of dollars, but when you get into mint state 67 or mint state 68 territory, the value jumps significantly. One of the main challenges with this coin is the quality of strike. Many 2001D nickels suffer from weak strikes, nicks, scratches, or bag marks because of the way they were mass-produced. Finding a perfectly struck coin with full steps on Monticello, meaning the steps are fully visible and sharply defined, is very difficult. And this is what collectors love to find. The so-called full steps designation is a premium quality marker and can multiply the value of the coin dramatically. Let us talk numbers. A typical mint state 65 2001D nickel without full steps might be worth $3 to $5, depending on the buyer. A mint state 67 can bring between $20 and $50, and a full steps example in mint state 67 can sell for hundreds of dollars. In fact, at auction, a 2001D nickel graded MS67 with full steps has sold for over $700. This shows how condition rarity can turn a modern coin into a highly valuable collectible. Now, let us also consider errors and varieties. Error coins are always exciting to collectors. A 2001D nickel could have off-center strikes, die cracks, double dies, or other striking mistakes, and these kinds of errors can range in value from $25 to several hundred, depending on the severity and uniqueness of the error. For example, an off-center strike showing about 50% off-center with a clear date and mint mark can sell for over $100. Another important detail is the market trend. The current market in 2025 shows that modern coins in top grade continue to attract strong prices. Many collectors are putting together complete sets of Jefferson nickels, and they need coins like the 2001D in high quality to complete their collections. Because of this demand, prices remain solid, and in some cases are still climbing, particularly for the full steps versions. It is also worth mentioning that this coin is a great example of how patience pays off. Many people dismiss coins from the early 2000s thinking they are too common, but the truth is that if you take the time to search through bank rolls or old collections, you can sometimes find high-grade examples that might be worth far more than face value. Imagine finding a 2001 nickel with sharp details and full steps in your change. That coin could easily be worth hundreds of dollars. Collectors should always handle coins carefully, never clean them, and consider professional grading if they believe their coin is of superior quality. Grading not only authenticates the coin, but also establishes its market value and makes it easier to sell in the future. So, to summarize, the 2001 D. Jefferson 5-cent nickel is a coin that on the surface appears common, but in high grades and with the full steps designation, it can be worth serious money. Circulated examples are worth 5 cents. Mint state coins without full steps can bring a few dollars. Mint state 67 can reach into the dozens, and full steps coins, especially in mint state 67 or higher, can reach several $100s. Rare errors can also bring in premium prices. The current market remains strong in 2025, with collectors eager to acquire top-quality examples, so the next time you come across a 2001 D nickel, do not just toss it aside. Take a close look at the steps on Monticello, check for errors, and consider its condition. You never know, you might have a valuable treasure in your pocket change. We are going to dive into one of the most interesting and most talked about modern United States coins, and that is the 2022 Jefferson 5-cent nickel minted at the Philadelphia Mint, which carries the P Mint mark. This coin may seem like just another ordinary nickel that you see in your pocket change, but when we look deeper into its history, design, value, and the current collector market, there is a lot to discover and a lot of money to be made if you know what to look for. Let us begin with a little background on the Jefferson nickel itself. The design first appeared in 1938 when it replaced the Buffalo nickel. The Jefferson design was created by Felix Schlag, who submitted the winning design in a national competition. His version showed a left-facing portrait of Thomas Jefferson on the obverse and Monticello, his home, on the reverse. This design went through only small adjustments until 2004, when the Westward Journey series temporarily changed the design to honor the Lewis and Clark expedition. By 2006, the coin featured a new forward-facing Jefferson portrait designed by Jamie Franke, which is still in use today, including on the 2022 issue. Now, let us focus on the 2022 Philadelphia minted Jefferson nickel. This coin was struck in large numbers. The mintage was well into the hundreds of millions, so at first glance one might assume that there is nothing rare or special about it. However, that is not always the case in coin collecting. It is not just about how many were made, it is also about condition, errors, varieties, and demand. Circulating examples of the 2022 P nickel will usually only be worth face value 5 cents, but collectors know that high-grade examples and coins with special characteristics can bring much higher prices. For example, if you were to take a roll of fresh 2022 nickel straight from a bank box and send the very best ones to a grading service like PCGS or NGC, you might discover some that grade at the very top levels, such as Mint State 67 or even Mint State 68. These are extremely difficult to find because the nickel is a larger coin made of a copper-nickel alloy, which makes it prone to marks and scratches during the striking and handling process. In recent years, top-graded Jefferson nickels from modern years have sold at auction for impressive prices, sometimes hundreds of dollars, or even more, depending on the year and the grade. For the 2022 P Jefferson nickel, values are still being established in the market, but the trend shows that collectors are willing to pay strong premiums for coins in flawless condition. Another important factor that can turn a regular 2022 nickel into a valuable find is the presence of errors and varieties. Coin errors can include things like double dies, off-center strikes, die cracks, retained cut errors, and other striking anomalies. If you happen to find a 2022 P nickel with a clear double die, especially on Jefferson's eye, his hair, the word liberty, or the inscription such as "In God We Trust," you could be holding a coin worth far more than face value. Error coins are always popular among collectors because they are rare and unique. No two errors are exactly alike. One example that collectors are already talking about involves potential die chips and die breaks on the 2022 nickel. These small raised bumps or cracks can appear around Jefferson's mouth, his eye, or around the lettering. While most of these are minor and may only bring a couple of dollars in extra value, dramatic examples can command a strong premium. and are eagerly snapped up by error collectors. So how much money can the 2022 P. Jefferson nickel really be worth? Let us break it down. First, at the base level, any regular worn example from circulation is worth 5 cents. That is its face value. Next, if you find a coin in uncirculated condition directly from a mint set or a bankroll, it might be worth between 25 cents and $1 depending on quality. Now, if the coin is professionally graded and comes back as mint state 67, it might sell for $25 to $50. If it comes back as mint state 68, which is a superb gem, then we are talking about hundreds of dollars because of the rarity of finding such a perfect example. In addition, certain errors or varieties can increase the value dramatically depending on the visibility and demand. It is also important to consider the role of the current market. Coin prices can fluctuate depending on the number of collectors looking for a particular year, the supply of coins in high grade, and the overall interest in the series. Right now, Jefferson nickels are seeing a boost in attention because they are affordable for new collectors, and yet they still hold exciting opportunities for discoveries. This makes the 2022 P nickel an appealing coin to set aside and examine closely if you are someone who wants to search for these valuable nickels. Here are a few tips. First, always check your pocket change and coin rolls from banks. You never know what might appear. Second, use a magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe to carefully inspect the details of each coin. Pay attention to the lettering, the portrait, and the steps of Monticello on the reverse coins, with full steps, meaning all of the lines on Monticello's steps are visible without interruption, are especially valuable and are one of the main grading designations used for Jefferson nickels. Third, if you believe you have a high grade or error coin, consider sending it to a professional grading service. That way you can authenticate and protect the coin and also maximize its resale value when you go to sell it. Collectors are always willing to pay more for coins that are certified. Finally, keep an eye on auction results and coin dealer listings because the market is always changing. What may only be worth a couple of dollars today could be worth much more in a few years as populations become better understood and as collectors search to complete their sets. So to sum everything up, the 2022 Jefferson P nickel may be common in circulation, but in top condition or with errors, it can be worth a lot of money. Regular worn examples are worth face value. Mint state examples can be worth $1 or $2. Superb gem examples graded MS67 or MS68 can reach into the tens or hundreds of dollars, and major errors or full step examples can also command strong premiums. This is a modern coin that is definitely worth searching for, and one that shows how even everyday pocket change can hold hidden treasures. That wraps up our deep dive into the 2022 Jefferson nickel from the Philadelphia Mint. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe because we will continue to bring you more updates on coin values, history, and tips on what to look for in your own change. Who knows, the next coin you find might be worth a fortune.